All right, looking forward to this one, Mark. You found a FanDuel post that got the juices flowing, fired off some questions in our heads about the best quarterbacks in each division, and we'll take that a step further and kind of discuss the tiers by division. But before we get into this episode for it, did want to discuss some news that came out today in terms of discussions that the NFLPA is having about making a proposal to completely get rid of OTAs essentially and just bump forward the start of training camp to about mid-June for teams to report. And so extending that practice window before the season, but also extending the break from Super Bowl till when they hit the field. Because right now it's a little bit janky. Some come back for OTAs and then they're off again for like 3 weeks. It's an interesting
It
proposal,
is
and a lot of
interesting.
people are speculating that to get this proposal through, it's going to require a concession that may include the 18-game season. So I'm very curious about that. That is probably the route that this seems to be going right now. But yeah, that report just coming out from Tom Pelissero this morning, and I thought that was interesting.
That's the NFL so good at playing that game, like dangle this to get that. They've done it now with the marijuana testing and the things like that, where it's like, all right, fine, we'll stop doing that. We don't care about that, but we're getting this in return. I think guys overall as teams, I think they would appreciate it. It's like, hey, when we're off, we're just off. Like, let's get the set.
We have a set period.
We're off. And if people want to come into the facility and want to get the work in or whatever, the facility's open and all that stuff. But there's no, hey, the Super Bowl ends and it's like every single team can look at it and say, training camp starts now, and rework the length of training camp maybe a little bit, or what the stages in which you go through it. I think that makes a ton of sense. I'd like to still see like the rookie camps. I wonder if that could affect like the rookies reporting at all. Hopefully
Probably
not
the rookie camps, but yeah.
And I think that's fair, and I think that's smart, and I think it makes sense. Like the rookies just kind of want to get in there and like have a chance to like know the facility, know where the locker is and everything before all the big dogs show up and the veterans come back to town. I like the idea. I love that the NFL is always constantly look to improve their product. They are not baseball. They are not, well, this is the way we've done it. I am worried though, because they're also, did you see they're going to test out in the preseason this year that the electronic chain measurement, the laser?
I did see that.
I hate that. I hate that so much. I hate that as much as I hate robot umpires. Fans need things like that. Like we need human elements in sports to just like let us have something to complain about and bitch and moan about when your team loses. I will always remember when you had now Gene Steratore with the index card. Remember that in the chain game where he brings out the index card? Like that is such a fun, weird, dumb thing about football that it gives football its quirks. Angel Hernandez just retiring in the MLB. Like, yeah, we need another one. We need the next guy up, Cowboy Joe West. We need that next person who's going to just piss everyone off, because that's what's fun about sports on the small scale. You don't want a ref show in the middle of a Super Bowl or in the middle of an NBA Finals game, 7, but during the year in those little weird intricacies. But overall, the point I'm trying to make, I do give the NFL credit for always looking to improve the product and just change things that make sense.
Yeah, I mean, I know we've talked about this. I am more for this move than you are, certainly, because I do see it as a very minor step, and still the refs are going to be thoroughly involved in the game and have plenty of opportunities to make waves with fans.
It's not apples to apples with the robot umps. Robot umps
Correct.
is a huge
Take away
deal.
A massive component.
Yeah.
Just speaking of the no card, we did an episode. It's like maybe it's 3 years ago at this point. One of my favorite episodes where we talked about what like our top 10 football memorabilia from the history of the NFL that we would want.
The no card.
The no card now. The no card should now enter the equation and have that posted up in one of the man caves for sure. But no, overall, it's an interesting decision. I'm more concerned about them testing it out for a preseason, and then if it goes well, they said they're just going to implement it during the season. That seems to be way too fast of a transition. If there's an organization that could pull it off, it's the NFL. But at the same time, I thought maybe they would test it out for like 2 preseasons and then like the following year would implement it. No, they're saying if it goes well, they're going to put it right in there
well,
within a few
they'll
weeks.
know soon. They'll know quickly. Within a game or two, they'll know, does this work or does this not, or what technical glitches or whatever we need to fix. But it's just sad. I love seeing the old fat guys, stumble out there trying to hold their pants up with one hand and hold the chain gain with the other. And then, try to get it all together. It's just it's a beautiful part of the football experience.
Yeah. They would be losing the Chain Gang, which is a known group throughout.
They already, they already took away the and Twins commercial from us. Now they're taking away our fat guys in the Chain Gang. It's just like, where's the America?
Where will it end?
Where's the America I grew up in? You know what I mean?
I like it. All right, let's get into our discussion. Each division will rank the quarterbacks and see who comes out on top. AFC, NFC. Here we go.
AFC West, good one to have on the
gave them away
graphic there. Yeah.
Let's go one that's going to be extremely non-controversial for the thumbnail image and start things off on a good note. All right, well, this came from FanDuel, so this is the graphic they have made saying, did we get this right? It's the best quarterback from each division, and Mark, you found this and kind of sparked the idea to have this as a topic for the show. Perfect time of the year to get this going. They really did Kyler Murray dirty here, although they did say he's the best quarterback in the NFC West. So a compliment, and then instantly a backhanded one where he's just barely off screen. But
shout out to FanDuel, obviously FanDuel guy for life. But this is so good by their social team. It's so good because there's things in this that just like absolutely like spark controversy. Like this engagement must have been insane, whatever the final engagement for this tweet was, because some of it is obvious and and spot on, and the other parts of it are so like, are you bleeping kidding me? Are you bleep?
Yeah, exactly.
Like Ravens fans throwing a fit, Eagles fans throwing a fit, Rams fans throwing a fit. So we'll get into it. And I just, originally we thought, hey, let's just pick our best QB in each division. But I think you were smart in taking it a step further. Let's rank the QBs in the division just 1 through 4 based on what we believe the starters are going to be. And then I would even go as far to say maybe at the end of it, we can figure out which division has just the best QBs in the whole of the NFL. Like, what's the best quarterback division in the NFL?
Yeah, absolutely. And we can go left to right, top to bottom with this one, starting with the AFC North. They have Joe Burrow. There is the top dog. Well, I guess first off, did you have any qualms with this? And would he be number one on your mind?
It starts controversial. He is my number one in this division, slightly ahead of Lamar. It's maybe the closest 1-2 race in all of this ranking, because
agreed.
I would not, if you come out and say, hey, I'm going to put Lamar number one, I literally am not going to fight you on it. Like I can't hold water for my guy, Joe Burrow, except for the fact that I've seen him take his team to the ultimate game. And I've seen him be in in the biggest moment on the road at Arrowhead and come back and win a football game, being down at half. And he's the only one of all of those young, great quarterbacks in the AFC. He's the only one that I've seen beat Mahomes in the biggest spot to get to the biggest game. And even though Lamar Jackson is a 2-time MVP, and he's phenomenal, and Lamar Jackson is a top 5 quarterback, but I think so is Joe Burrow. And I think that's where it falls. And I think what will be key for Joe Burrow this year is making sure he finally has a year where he starts training camp healthy, which apparently he is, and makes it all the way through training camp and the preseason healthy. So this Bengals team could just start the year fresh and ready to go. Problem is now his 2 wide receivers aren't reporting because they both want to get paid.
Yeah.
But I'm going to have Joe Burrow number one. Is he your number one too?
No, I did put Lamar. It was super close. I agree with you. I put Lamar mainly because of just the production overall. Yeah. The 2-time MVP. He has been hurt as well, but he's been on the field more than Joe Burrow overall.
True.
That to me is something to be valued. I mean, I take injury concern into play when I'm, thinking about these tiers. Like, are these guys that are more dependable and reliable? And so far, Joe Burrow, it's not, I'm not saying it's his fault or like that he's an injury prone guy. It's been unfortunate. He's had some bad O-lines as well. But that to me just needed to be taken factor into it. The biggest advantage for him is what you laid out, that he is the guy that's gone into Arrowhead, that's won the big game, that's gotten to the Super Bowl, at the biggest stage. And Lamar hasn't been able to show, that he can overcome that hump, similar to what Josh Allen has not done. So I could see both arguments here. I just put Lamar over the top, mainly for the MVPs, overall production, record-breaking seasons, things like that he's put together. And then Joe Burrow, obviously number 2 for me. What gets interesting is the 3-4 debate, because I actually think there is a debate to be had here. For me, Mark, I'm actually putting Russell Wilson at number 3 in the AFC North, because Deshaun, for a similar reason, has not shown to be able to stay healthy now. Yeah. It's been about 4.5 years since we saw him play at a high level. It's been 3 since we saw Russell, really do the same. And Russell's been pretty darn bad over the last 2 years, but you could use other excuses to kind of say, he had Nathaniel Hackett, new place, like all of that stuff. Whereas Deshaun had a great surrounding cast, great offensive head coach, great running game, phenomenal defense, and still hasn't been able to stay on the field and really hasn't been great when he's on it. So, yeah, that's how my ranking goes. Lamar, Joe, Russell Wilson, Deshaun Watson.
Yeah, I'm with you with the Lamar, with the Deshaun and Russell. I hate it too, but I put Russell ahead of Deshaun. I have Deshaun 4, I have Russell 3, I have Lamar 2, and Joe at number 1. So besides the move there at the top, but again, I'm not going to fight you on it. I think it's the one thing I'll let the Bengals fans and Ravens fans like go at each other's throats over this. I'm just going to sit back and say, these are 2 top 5 quarterbacks in the NFL. These are 2 guys that I would love leading my franchise if I was 90% of the teams in the NFL. And I think this year will be a deciding factor a little bit onto kind of giving us a more clear definitive, because up until this point, it feels like their resumes are eerily similar in just like building the case for who's the number 1 spot. This year could be a defining year for both of them.
Absolutely. And, it's interesting too, as I was kind of going through this list and the breakdowns, you think going into it how easy it's going to be, but outside of the Josh Allens and the Patrick Mahomes, like there are debates to be had. And some of these are even like real head scratchers as to what to do. And I think maybe some would consider the AFC South, which is next, as one of those options. FanDuel here having CJ Stroud as the top quarterback in the AFC South, and Jacksonville Jaguars fans, I'm sure, very upset about that. I also had CJ Stroud at number 1, as much as that pains me to say, because you and I have been huge Trevor Lawrence fans coming into the NFL. We talked about how he was the best prospect since Andrew Luck and really John Elway, and how great of an NFL quarterback we think he will be. And I still do think he will be a great NFL quarterback and has plenty of time to take this top spot. But we haven't seen a season from Trevor Lawrence like we saw from CJ Stroud as a rookie. So I got to give him his flowers. And right now he deserves to be in that top spot in my view.
Yeah, I have no argument with you. I feel exactly how you feel. Trevor Lawrence, I still have a lot of faith in. Trevor Lawrence, I still believe, can become a top 5 quarterback in the NFL. He's got literally all the tools and potential. We need to see it a big consistent year from him this year. But right now, CJ Stroud, what he did as a rookie and winning a playoff game, getting to the second round and putting up just the season he did. I think back to all the time. Do you remember after like the first 2 games of the season last year for the Texans? I think they were 1-1 or 0-2. But we came on here and I was just like, why are you having CJ Stroud throw the ball 44 times? I remember going on that rant. I'm like, he's going to be great, but you're overdoing it and you're going to cook this kid and blah, blah, blah. And then about like 2 or 3, 4 weeks more would go by. We're in like week 5, week 6, week 7. We're like, oh yeah, no, yeah, the staff was right.
He can
handle it. And this is how they win. And that's just been so impressive his rookie year. I'm with you. CJ Stroud 1, Trevor Lawrence 2 for me. Then it gets to me really just a total toss-up. I put Will Levis at 3 and Anthony Richardson at 4.
Same here. Yeah,
purely because I saw more of Will Levis last year, and when Will Levis debuted and even when he struggled at times late in the season, he has got a real Jay Cutler vibe to him. And I think that when I link back on, if Will Levis can become Jay Cutler, like if that's his peak, I know that's a really quality NFL starting quarterback. Anthony Richardson, what's his peak right now? His peak is still, maybe you'd argue, Cam Newton, but the concussions and then a massive surgery on your throwing shoulder for a guy who's already not like his best attribute as a throw was like the bomb deep ball. It's like, yikes. It's just, what a scary start for someone with so much potential. So I'm going to put him 4. But he's probably the most talented 4 and highest ceiling 4, I'd argue. We'll have to think about this as we go through it. But he's probably the highest ceiling 4 of any quarterback.
Yeah, it's all about sample size that we have, and Anthony Richardson just hasn't given us nearly enough to make a well-rounded evaluation. There's a lot of like rookie quarterbacks on this list are going to enter that same type of situation where we're not sure. And so we have to rank them accordingly based on just the minimal information we have. And Will Levis,
we're the same
throw
there.
4 touchdowns in a game. We've seen him, use his athleticism, and he has less than ideal weapons to work with. Certainly a worse grouping than Indianapolis. And so, there's that. By the end of the season, Anthony Richardson could jump up to 3. And I mean, maybe 2. Who knows? We're not sure. But
I also think Will Levis now having the weapons and an offensive head coach, like, would it shock you if Will Levis has a breakout year, like a really nice year 2, and now all of a sudden it's, it's that division could quickly become a year from now where we're talking about it like that's the most talented quarterback division in the NFL.
Oh yeah, easily. Yep. That very well could be the case. The last thing I want to note on the CJ and Trevor debate really is that if CJ didn't win a playoff game, like didn't take the Texans that far, didn't win, then there might actually be a little bit of a discussion because Trevor did win a playoff game and, a comeback and an impressive win at that. And then you could say, okay, well, the production then, one playoff win matters a lot for a young quarterback compared to none. But the fact that CJ then won and 2, that just catapulted him to the next level.
And the problem is, even though Trevor Lawrence a year ago at this time was coming off like a CJ Stroud-esque year where we were really high on him, that was only 1 year.
Yeah.
And then it was such a bad year. Last year was such an ugly year offensively for him and that Jags team that you're like, I have the sample size is 1 solid year, 1 ugly year. You forget the Urban Meyer stuff. And so it's like, I'm just left wondering. With CJ, all I have right now is 1 really, really high-end year. And so it's a what have you done for me lately league. Absolutely, when we talk about quarterbacks especially.
Takes us to the AFC East now. They have Josh Allen as the number 1 quarterback. I'm going to go ahead and guess maybe. You don't have any qualms with that one? I don't think Aaron Rodgers has put himself in that top spot.
No qualms at all. No qualms at all. I think that Josh Allen, again, we've now talked about our third of the top 5 quarterbacks, probably, arguably in the NFL. He's a top 5 guy to me. He is the one person that when you talk about who needs a breakthrough playoff win right now, he's it. Like him and Lamar are the 2 guys that like desperately need a breakthrough playoff win. And a lot of people are selling stock on Buffalo. I'm not too sure. I'm willing to buy a lot of the people who are selling the Buffalo stock this year. But if we're just talking about quarterbacks, I think Josh Allen, I'm excited for him to have a year now where, remember when he got Stephon Diggs, he needed Stephon Diggs because he was a young player who didn't know the game, but he just needed a go-to guy who could get open. But now I trust Josh Allen to be the leader, to be the guy who understands how he wants to run an offense and his brain catching up with his talent. And so I'm excited to see what Josh Allen now does, where you almost get rid of the distractions and you get rid of the I need the ball guy in the locker room. And we saw what Patrick Mahomes has done since they got rid of the I need the ball guy in Tyreek Hill. And it's been a lot of freedom to just do what you need to do. It also is hurt at times where it's like, God, he just needs someone to help him make a play. But I think that Josh Allen's got the weapons they do have in place are intriguing. And I'm not selling Josh Allen and Bill's stock just yet. I'm buying.
Who you got at 2?
At 2 is really tough. At 2, Jacoby Brissett. No. I will go Aaron at 2. It's such a slight to Tua. It's so mean to Tua. Tua was an MVP for, 5/8 of the year last year. 6/8 of the year.
Aaron's a future Hall of Famer.
But Aaron, and that's just it. Aaron, the last time we saw him play consistent football, had a down year, like Trevor Lawrence. But
coming off an MVP year, a back-to-back MVP year.
Aaron is also, one of the bona fide top 10 great quarterbacks of all time. And I think Aaron is highly motivated. So I will go Aaron 2, slightly ahead of Tua at 3. Tua, the problem we're going to have with him is like we talked about on the show last week, he absolutely needs to have himself a playoff caliber year. Like he needs to be back in the playoffs to where you can feel just consistently saying, all right, we now know Tua is a guy, if he stays healthy for 17 games, he will get you to the playoffs. And that's the best thing you can do in your career when you are in the Jared Goff, Dak Prescott, Kirk Cousins category. That keeps you employed and keeps you getting big paydays because teams love to just be in the playoffs and they love the stamp of, all right, lock it in, we're in the playoffs this year. If Tua can do that back-to-back years, that's huge. And it might move him up to number 2 on this list, depending on where we are at the time next year in Aaron's career and everything. So 2 at 3, and then I'll put Jacoby Brissett / Drake May. Doesn't matter. They're at 4. Neither of those guys right now deserves to be ahead of Tua or Aaron. Certainly not Josh.
No, definitely not. I have a similar rationale for having Aaron Rodgers number 2 myself. The pedigree is there, the production. Obviously he's got injury concerns at this point in his career, but Tua's not without those as well. And so he put a full season together last year, Tua did, and was on an MVP trajectory, an MVP candidate, played really well within the system, but yet we're seemingly finding ourselves with Miami now, wondering whether or not they're going to pay him the big bucks and the big extension. So that's kind of a red flag and a tell-all for, how much of it is system-based, how much of it is Tua and his talent. We know he's accurate. We know he can work really well in the system. So that's not trying to make a full knock on him because obviously not every quarterback can do that. But Aaron is still Aaron in many respects. And so, he gets the nod there. And then Jacoby, a career, one of the best backups in recent memory to come through this league, can win people games and is a top 32 at times throughout his career. And so he's really solid, but amongst this grouping of quarterbacks, you just can't, put him anywhere else. So,
it's interesting. It just hit me as we're thinking about this. Of the Kyle Shanahan tree, I would include Sean McVay, Kyle Shanahan, Matt LaFleur, and now Mike McDaniel, right? Those are the 4 offensive guys, all within the same family tree. They all basically want to start with a physical run game and everything builds off of play action and things like that. We've seen a lot of quarterbacks in that world, right? In that tree. Jared Goff, Matt Stafford, Trey Lance, Brock Purdy, Jimmy Garoppolo. We've seen Aaron Rodgers in that with LaFleur. We've seen now Jordan Love and now we're seeing Tua. It really is interesting how, to me, you can make the argument Jordan Love is the kind of like perfect quarterback so far of all the guys we've seen for that system, where it's like he's not just a physical freak like Trey Lance. Trey Lance was just too physical, not accurate enough to succeed in that system, right? And he's not just too tiny, small, accurate like Tua, like Brock Purdy, like
or
Jimmy
stiff
G.
in the pocket. Yeah.
Yeah, where you just write him off because it's like, well, yeah, they're just a system guy, right? And he's not Aaron, to where Aaron fought against the system because Aaron's anti-system. Aaron is, I'm Picasso out there. Let me paint. Let me go. Let the magician go to work, which it's worked for him for almost 20 years. And so Jordan Love has this really unique pigeonhole to where it's like, if you are Mike McDaniel, if you are Kyle Shanahan, you might just say to yourself, wait a minute. The guy we need to find is Jordan Love. Physical, mobile, but huge buy-in, but obviously physically more gifted than Tua and Brock Purdy. And the one thing we've argued with Jordan Love so far right now is his accuracy has been the thing that's killed him. So it's like, if you're Matt LaFleur, you kind of wish him to be a little bit more accurate, wish him had a little bit more of the Tua Brock Purdy accuracy. So it's really, it's a fun, when you look at those four guys in their systems. Now, Stafford has also really succeeded in the system. And I would argue it's probably a lot because he's at the age of his career where he knows he needs to buy in. Like, he just has to buy in because he physically can't move around like he used to and wanted to. And he's got to be all in with the system or else he's just not going to succeed. And it got him a Super Bowl. So for those four guys, finding the guy, I think the perfect guy for that system is Joe Burrow. Like, if Mike McDaniels could get himself a Joe Burrow or honestly a CJ,
like a Justin Herbert, maybe.
Justin Herbert, where it's ridiculously accurate, but also has the physical tools. CJ Stroud, maybe too. Those are the guys, and Jordan Love, I would argue, is kind of like a B version of all three of those guys we just mentioned. Sure. So when we're talking about Tua, it just got me thinking about, like, if they move on from him, which I think they should, like, what does Miami need to look for? They need to find their Jordan Love. It's a weird thing to say, but I think it makes sense.
Yeah. No, that's an interesting point. I hadn't really thought of it in the scheme of the whole tree and all that, but
tangent. But we're just now,
out.
Yeah.
Yeah. Well, to round out the AFC, let's go to the AFC West, perhaps the easiest one to grade out here so far. They've got Mahomes in the number one spot. We've got Mahomes in the number one spot. Herbert, number two for me.
Yep, absolutely.
And then Minshew, and round out with Bo Nix, because we just don't know what we're getting with Bo
Minshew. Minshew, I know, is a quality starting NFL quarterback. He is the bottom of the Jared Goff group, but he's in that Jared Goff group, and he's earned the right to be in that Jared Goff group.
You mean like in the tier, like where you place Jordan or Jared Goff in terms of the hierarchy? In
no,
the NFL,
remember how I say Jared Goff is now the face of the Dak Prescott Kirk Cousins group.
Okay.
So they are the guys that need a great supporting cast from coach to players around them. We know they need that to have a chance to win. And he is, so that's like Jared Goff's the leader of that group, but like that group is Jared, Kirk, Dak, Derek Carr, Minshew's in that. There's probably other guys I'm missing right now. I would argue
probably be
Garoppolo. As of right now, I think Jordan Love is in that group as well. We just don't know. So like Jordan Love would be in that group. Tua in that group. Brock Purdy in that group. Guys where it's like, we know if they have a great supporting cast and a great head coach, they can lead you to a Super Bowl or multiple playoff wins. But like then there's a bottom tier of that where it's like, yeah, if they have a great supporting cast, a great head coach, they can win you games. Like Gardner's in that group.
And that's Gardner, yeah.
Yeah, I don't know about Bo Nix. I have there was Colin Cowherd was trying to sell the other day on like, no, we have a great Sean Payton is saying great things about Bo Nix camp. Well, duh, he's going to say.
Yeah, of course he is.
And Colin Cowherd is carrying water for, as much as I love Cowherd, he's my guy.
Payton.
He's carrying water for Payton because I think he knows that Payton might get fired here in a year and he wants to get him back at Fox. And I don't blame him. He's a company guy. Do what you got to do, Colin. But I'm so not buying in on any of that hype right now.
Agreed. Yeah, that AFC West in general is really easy to suss out right now, and we'll see what Bo Nix is able to do with Sean Payton at the helm and kind of bring him into the NFL. I mean, I will say there's probably 10 or so coaches that you'd feel comfortable with bringing a rookie quarterback along, and Sean Payton might be in that group because he's a guy that he can mold him as he sees fit. Bo Nix is a rookie who's going to be, very much coachable and willing to fall in line. And that's kind of what Sean Payton wants, it seems. So that might work out.
Absolutely. Sean would have loved one of the higher end talent guys for sure. But in the end, there's the reason they took Bo Nix is because in the end, Sean Payton just wants a guy that he can control. And he will be seen as, even if Bo Nix fails, Sean will be able to say, well, we tried, but in the end, he just didn't have the talent. I'm not the fault, even though I think there should be more pressure on Sean Payton than he'll try to let on for sure.
Oh, yeah. I agree with that. So we finished the AFC here, and I did take Lamar over Joe, but absolutely no issues with that. So all in all, it's fairly a clean sweep in terms of
who would you say is the best quarterback division of the AFC?
Of the compilation, it's probably the AFC North. The AFC.
I go West. I go West because Mahomes is one, and there's
Herbert's so good. Yeah,
there's such a clear division between one and anyone else, and so they have that weight. And then when you add in that Herbert, I could argue, is in the discussion for 3, 4, 5, 6, right? He's probably not lower than 7. So you have 1 and at worst 7, but probably closer to 5 or 6. And then Gardner
you have the
Minshew,
basement of the league.
Like Gardner Minshew is, to me, not much different from Tua. He's better than Brissett. He's more known right now. You have to put Gardner ahead of Levis and Richardson. And right now, would you rather have Gardner Minshew in Pittsburgh than Russell Wilson?
No, I'd probably still have Russell.
But
Wilson,
it's close.
It's not crazy. Yeah.
And would you rather have Gardner Minshew in Cleveland than Deshaun Watson? It's not crazy. It's not crazy.
Isn't. No.
So I would go AFC West, but I think North is probably number 2, purely based on
North has the highest floor, probably.
They have the highest. I would agree. They have the highest floor, 1 through 4, highest floor of guys that are all probably top 15, including 2 top 5s. So,
yeah. No, that's interesting. We go down to the NFC North now. Instantly, I do have issue with Jordan Love being tabbed the number 1 quarterback in the NFC North.
He's not number 1.
Jared Goff, right? I mean, it's got to be Goff right now.
Jared Goff he's earned the right to be the guy whose face is there at 1.
Yeah.
And listen, again, this division is the one that's wide open. A year from now, we could be saying completely different things. But I would go, I'd go Goff 1, Love 2, Caleb 3, and then
McCarthy,
AJ,
Darnold.
Yeah, same thing. McCarthy, Darnold 4. This is the one, though, in a year from now, you could easily go 3-1, 2-1, 1-3. Yep. So it's just depending on what we see from the rookies and then what we see out of Jordan Love in a contract year. Goff got paid, so he's going to want to play well because they have a win now team and he wants to live up to the contract. Jordan Love is trying to get paid, so he's going to try to have a banner year. Same with Trevor Lawrence, and same with Tua, same with Dak, and then you have Caleb Williams, the number 1 overall pick, who I could argue right now, if you're just talking about raw talent, who's the most talented guy in the division, I think you would be crazy not to say Caleb Williams.
Yeah, it's probably Caleb.
We just don't know what his game looks like at the NFL level. So, yeah, I have Goff, Love, Caleb, JJ.
Yeah, same lineup for me. And the NFC North, maybe AFC South is a close second, is the one division where I say there is the most variance potential
for
at the
year.
end of this season.
Yeah,
it could be a total shakeup, and the AFC South could be very similar with Levis and Richardson, depending on how they play. Lawrence, could he play MVP level? Who knows?
I would argue the only main variance would be I don't see Stroud going from 1 to 3 or 1 to 4.
Sure. Yeah.
He could go
but
1
2
to
through
2.
4 could be complete shakeups.
Yeah, he could go 1 to 2. I could see Jared Goff being 1 to 3. I don't see him going 1 to 4 because I don't believe in McCarthy at all. I have zero belief in him.
Not to the level to supersede Goff at this point.
Yeah, not to the level in a year from now to supersede Goff. So yeah, but it is. You're right. Like it could be a total different 1 through 4 this year to next year.
Yeah, could be a lot of shuffling. All right, we go to the NFC South. They have Kirk Cousins as the top quarterback. This was an interesting division to have to kind of think through. But I personally had Cousins number 1. What about you?
Baker Mayfield, I think, deserves to be number 1. He led his team to a playoff victory last year. And he is healthy. Like I know what and what I love about the Baker thing is a year ago at this time, I was trashing on Baker. I was saying the Bucs need to lose every game and just reset, and they need to fire their coach and get rid of Baker. Like this was dumb of them to even go into with this win now. But Todd Bowles and Baker Mayfield were literally one of the great stories of last year and what they did. And they bring a lot of guys back. They refresh into that roster. I'm going to go with Baker as my top dog in the AFC South to start this year. I would go Kirk 2, right? I would go Derek Carr 3, and then I would go Bryce Young 4. And again, this is a division to where I don't see one going to 4. But it could happen. It's the one division why I think you'd even argue with Kirk. It could go 1 to 4, depending on how his body reacts and how this season shakes on out. I don't see 4 to 1, but maybe it's a weird division. But I'm going to give Baker some flowers. I will have him slightly ahead of Kirk.
Yeah, I like Baker. I mean, he's number 2 for me. I think Kirk throughout his entire career has been the epitome of consistency. What you're going to get. He hasn't come off an Achilles before. This is also
Kirk's first major injury.
Yes, yeah, it is his first major injury. Baker, we saw one really good year last year, and then a decent year in Cleveland, leading them to a playoff victory as well. But there's been a lot more fluctuation with Baker Mayfield's play and his consistency. So for me, it was more of a comfort pick. I felt that it was more conservative and just right down the middle to have Cousins number 1. But it's not like he's light years ahead of Mayfield at this point. So yeah,
and then you would go Carr, Bryce Young,
and then Carr, Young, absolutely.
So can I ask you this question? And this is again, we're trying to just find just an overall sense of where we both lie on quarterbacks going into this year.
Yeah.
If you had, so let's say your team, Pittsburgh, I think it's a great team to use. Tough schedule. You got weapons. You know what I mean? You have an established head coach, so there's a lot of structure there. New offense coordinator who we both like. So if you said you have to win 10 or more games this year with that schedule, and I told you could have Russell or Baker, who would you choose? For just 1 year, you have to win 10 or more games.
Right, yeah.
And they have to start them all. You can't say, well, then I can go to Justin Fields. No. You got to go.
Yeah.
I'd go Baker over Russell.
Probably would go Baker. Yeah, I probably
now,
would.
it's
would go
different with
him.
the
Now,
contracts and where, it's like you're taking a
Sure,
flyer
sure.
on
what
Russell,
you're
right?
paying and
But if
yeah.
a gun to your head, you have got to win 10 or more games. Like, you got to give yourself a chance.
The only
okay?
argument you could make is that, since we are taking these individual situations into consideration, the Steelers' offense is in dire need of veteran leadership. And while Baker is a veteran, Russell brings this pedigree with him, Super Bowl winner.
Yeah, but he also brings
Hall
up.
of
He
Fame
also brings a scorched earth of locker rooms that have said terrible things about him.
That's a fair point. That's
So,
a fair point.
all right. So then I also ask you then, same scenario. Now, would you rather, if you were the Steelers, would you have, so we know we both like Baker more than Carr. Do you like Carr? Would you take Derek Carr? Again, this year, all in Derek Carr or Russell Wilson, I got to win 10 games. Got to win 10 games.
Yeah.
I'd
probably take Carr, and the reason I say that is because this offense, to my knowledge, we obviously don't know exactly how it's going to look, but I don't think they're going to be able to afford turnovers. And Russell, the last couple of years, has had a lot of turnovers. And if there's one thing you could say about Derek Carr, is he's been maybe a little bit too conservative throughout his career, but he's not going to have the backbreaking play. They're going to run the ball a ton, so it's really going to be, can you do play action well?
Yeah.
I think Carr, Mayfield, and Wilson all could. But yeah, I mean, now it's a fair point.
In building our own quarterback rankings, then it's interesting because we both would then agree Kirk over Russell, right?
Yeah.
In that scenario, we both agree Carr and Baker over Russell in that scenario. Close.
Yeah, loosely Baker, but yes, I would probably agree still.
So then we would both agree, if we were to do a quarterback ranking right now, 1 through 32, we would put Carr, we would put Baker, we would put Kirk, we would put Russell ahead of Deshaun Watson. Because we both picked Russell over Watson.
Yeah. I mean, that's...
And I think when you lay it out like that, it's really close, but I think I would. I think it would be like Derek Carr, Deshaun Watson, like 1-2. Like, they're right there.
You can't trust him. You can't
right there.
Trust rolling out what's going to happen.
And I think this is an important lesson to think about when you are ranking quarterbacks, in that, like, hey, remove them from their situation and put them into a situation like a Pittsburgh. I think Pittsburgh's a great example for this year of, like, tough schedule, but there's weapons, but they need like who do you think could win more games in Pittsburgh's situation? Right now, I think Carr and Deshaun Watson would win about the same amount of games in Pittsburgh's situation. But I think Baker, Russell, and Kirk would all win more than those guys.
Another lesson that this teaches a lot of players throughout the league, and it might be not the right lesson to take away from it, but it's when someone wants to give you $200 million guaranteed,
say yes.
Just say yes and don't try and bet on yourself and do something crazy. Because like we've seen with Deshaun, he gets his $230 million guaranteed and kind of falls off a giant cliff in terms of the playmaking. It could all happen in 1 year. In 1 year, you could be totally irrelevant.
Well, we said that about the Baker deal when Baker turned down
and he's had his
a very reasonable deal from Cleveland. Yeah. And that's why if you're Tua, I would say if you're Jordan Love, I would say if you're Dak Prescott, if you're getting a reasonable deal extension, take it. Because look at what Kirk just got, another deal. Like, if you just take it, because as soon as you lose your starting job, it's really hard to get another. Right? Yeah. So take that really good, reasonable life. It's all life-changing money anyways. It's all going to be over $100 million guaranteed now. So take it and then win a lot of games and then bet on yourself to get another deal. But if you never get that another deal, at least you had life-changing money in the first place. Baker almost missed out on life-changing money. And Baker's deal he got with Tampa, it's good, but it's still not what he would even got when the Cleveland deal came around.
Yeah, yeah. And would you rather be playing with that Cleveland roster right now versus Tampa? The only argument you could say is Tampa's got an easier path to the playoffs.
NFC.
But
Yeah, I know. And that showed because he won a playoff game last year.
Yeah, exactly. All right, let's go to the NFC East. They got Dak Prescott, the Dallas Cowboy, atop the list. There'd probably be, I know on its face, it probably seems a little controversial, but I guarantee, that it would probably be a 50-50 split between analysts and fan bases alike and all of that stuff as to who they would put at number one. I think we both are much lower on Dak than maybe consensus. And so for me, he's definitely not number one in this division.
Yeah, it's Jalen Hurts.
Yeah.
But it's tough. Yeah. It's close. It's an argument.
It is
I would listen to the argument.
Yeah,
and I would
because
say
of last year's play from Jalen.
Yeah, and I would say Dak is a more consistent quarterback than Jalen.
Sure. Absolutely is. Yeah,
so we would have them
1-2.
I've seen him win at the highest level. I've seen him outplay Mahomes in the biggest game. He had the fumble, and it cost him the game. And so I would argue that Philly's collapse last year was just so ugly that, it draws in a doubt. It draws in doubt to where I'd allow the argument, and I wouldn't fight too hard for people who push for Dak. But I would still ride with Jalen Hurts for another year over Dak. And Dak 2, 3, Jaden Daniels.
Yeah, that's what I got too. Yeah.
4 is Daniel Jones.
Because we just know we know what we've got. And it's not very good. So yeah, I mean, I am willing. This is one of the rare instances where I am willing to say I don't even have to have seen a down of NFL play from Jaden Daniels yet to put him ahead, because he at least has all of the tools to make it work. Now, whether or not it will, that's another story. But
if you're Pittsburgh in the situation we're using, our litmus test, Daniel Jones or Gardner Minshew.
For a Pittsburgh quarterback, we're not talking about over Russell Wilson. We're just saying in general, would you take
1 year
Minshew with this roster?
You gotta win. You gotta win. You gotta try to win 10 games. Daniel Jones or Gardner Minshew.
I'd probably take Minshew.
I would too. Yeah. I would too. And I would. But I would take
the ball over Daniel Jones.
But I would take Deshaun over both of those guys.
Yeah.
So we're officially putting then Daniel Jones in our Minshew, Jacoby Brissett world of quarterbacks, where it's
the bottom tier of that grouping. Absolutely. Yeah.
Now Daniel Jones has a chance to move out of that group. Gardner, I think, would have to do so much to move out of the group. If Daniel Jones has another bounce back year and leads the team to the playoffs, like he did 2 years ago, it wouldn't give me still a ton of faith, but he could keep his job. Like, he could keep his job.
He could. It's not out of the realm of possibility.
He's got to win a playoff. He's got to get back to the playoffs. He's got to get back to the playoffs. But that's the only way he keeps his job. Because then you argue year 3 of the big contract with Daniel Jones. Now we're earning money back on as a team, right? To where it's like he's affordable, and we made it to the playoffs last year. And we're still not necessarily in a win now mode. That New York roster needs another year of adding talent. They need to, you know what I mean? But that's a big if. It's a big if.
Yeah, no, that's fair. All right, we end with the NFC West. They have Mr. Kyler Murray as the quarterback here. And this brings up an interesting conversation. I'm not going to give away just yet where I have him in this lineup, but I was at a local brewery this past weekend, and like a big discussion and argument, if you will, with like one of the bartenders and a couple other people I was with at the table about Kyler Murray in general. He seems to be one of the most polarizing choices amongst where we place them, because I had some people saying like Kyler Murray isn't nearly as good as Dak. I had people saying that Kyler, like, they would take some of these rookies over Kyler Murray instantly. I feel like the pendulum is swinging a little bit too far against Kyler Murray.
Agreed.
To where it's kind of ridiculous. We've seen him be hyper accurate, super mobile. He had one year plus a couple games where he wasn't wasn't playing because of an injury. But other than that, I mean, he's been really talented and really productive on a bad team too. At that, so
Miami would
that.
kill for Kyler Murray this year.
100%.
They would kill for Kyler Murray. So I agree. I'm going to go Stafford 1, Kyler 2.
Yeah,
Purdy,
that's what I've got too.
Purdy 3, Purdy 3, and then Geno
4. Yeah.
But it's a really solid I mean, Purdy is your 3. It's a really solid quarterback division. It's the best division in the NFC. Now, by this time next year, it may not be because of if Caleb ascends to what we think is the number 1 pick he could become, like that makes it interesting, But right now, they're the number 1 in the NFC, and I would argue. So let's try to find where we place Kyler Murray. So let's throw a couple comparisons out there. You ready? If you're the Steelers, right? We'll go back to this. Kyler or Dak, you have 10. You got to win 10 games this year.
Kyler, no question.
I agree.
I don't even think it's debatable. I think Kyler is way better than Dak.
Kyler or Kirk?
Kyler.
Okay, agreed. Kyler or Jordan Love?
I'm taking Kyler.
I would agree. I know more of Kyler.
Yeah.
And I've seen him at his peak longer. Kyler or Jared Goff? I'd go Goff.
It gets a little bit tougher. Yeah.
Goff's a grown-up. Goff played big moments.
It probably would be Goff because yes.
So that's what's interesting because Kyler is not in the Goff category, but I would put Goff ahead of
quarterbacks in general.
Yeah, I would put Goff ahead of Kyler. So now let's go. Kyler,
I think because we were talking about where would you place Kyler just among NFL quarterbacks, and my instinct was to say he's top 12. And I think he's probably right at 12.
And I think if we went through this, we keep going, I think we would get there because I think we would I would take Hurts over Kyler, wouldn't you?
Yeah, but
you have to because you have Hurts over Dak, and you'd say
yes.
I would. All right. So we know he's not taking over Mahomes or Herbert. We know we're not taking him over Allen. I'd take him over Aaron.
At this point, I would.
I'd take him over Tua, obviously.
Yep.
I would take Stroud. Would you take Lawrence over Kyler? 1 year. Again, 1 year. You got to win 10 games. You're the Pittsburgh Steelers. Trevor Lawrence or Kyler Murray?
I would probably take Kyler in this situation. It'd be close.
I think
Trevor has been a little too gunslingery.
They're the line of demarcation, right? Because we would take Joe and we would take Lamar.
Yes.
We would take Goff. We wouldn't take Jordan. We would take Kyler over anyone in the NFC South. We would take Kyler over anyone in the NFC East who's not Jalen. And we would take him over anyone in the NFC West who's not Stafford. So really, Kyler, we have 2 ahead of him in the AFC North. We have 1 ahead of him in the AFC South. We have 1 ahead of him in the AFC East. We have 2 ahead of him in the AFC West. We have 1 ahead of him in the North. 1 ahead of him in the NFC East. We have 1 ahead of him. So he's 10.
So he's like 10. And then
11.
You could say,
with Trevor Lawrence.
Yeah. Right.
Yeah. 10, 11. Yeah. I think that's right. I agree with I think that's 100% right. Now, Kyler also could bottom out this year. Like he could fall into the 20s depending on how this year goes. Trevor Lawrence, I don't think could bottom out to the 20s depending on how the year goes unless it's so abysmal because Trevor has the advantage of he's 6'5" and he's the prototype.
And he can make insane throws. And absolutely. No, it's an interesting thought experiment, though.
So that's where it's the 1 year thing. Because if you say to me over the next 4 years, well, then I'd take Caleb over Kyler. I'd take probably Jaden Daniels over Kyler.
Broadens.
I would maybe even take
Trevor. Probably take Trevor over.
Yeah, and I'd probably even take maybe a flyer on Anthony Richardson just because, like, he's a freak. Like, I don't know. But that's where it's tough. That's where it gets tough. And that's why I think it's important when you rank quarterbacks, you assert that this is this year going into this next year. It's not a who are you having for the next 5 years. 5 years ago, Matthew Stafford had no ring and was in Detroit. Like 5 years is an eternity in the NFL.
In the NFL, absolutely. So much.
It's an eternity.
Yeah. So we have we're split on the best quarterback in the AFC North. You say Joe, I say Lamar.
Yeah,
we are in
we're
agreement.
In the NFC
CJ,
South.
We're in agreement there. We're in agreement that Josh Allen leads the AFC East and Patrick Mahomes in the West. We disagree with FanDuel on the Jordan Love pick. We say Goff is the best in the NFC North.
Yep.
We disagree on Kirk versus Baker in the South. We agree on Hurts over Dak in the East, and we agree on Stafford over Kyler in the West.
But we have no other 2 or 3 disagreements either. Once we figure out that one, it falls in the line.
Yeah, no, we're pretty lockstep across the board here. So that was
but I really
fun
think
to work through. But yeah,
I really do think that makes sense. Like in the NFL, you're and let's listen. The number one guy in each division that we pick, we're both for the most part picking them to win the division, right? Like right now, I am like right. If you had a gun to my head right now, who's winning the AFC North next year? I would take the Bengals because I got Joe, and like slightly ahead of the Ravens, but like that's a tough one. Right now, I would take the Bucks to win the NFC South. Like I'm taking the Lions to win the NFC North. I'm taking the Eagles to win the NFC East. I'm taking the Rams to win the NFC West. I am.
Right.
Spoiler, we'll get into that. Like right now, I am. Right now, so it's like that.
Yeah.
Purdy's the one that's interesting in that regard.
He is, being the third best quarterback in your division,
but maybe the favorites to win your division.
Right. Yeah, that's like the one anomaly, but that's the Kyle Shanahan factor, and that's Christian McCaffrey and all these other.
I might argue that maybe it's not Jordan Love, and maybe it is Kyler Murray, who's like the perfect pick for the Shanahan offense. Like think about Kyler with Mike McDaniel or Kyle Shanahan, like extremely mobile, but not a physical freak to where he's just going to bail and become a head case like Trey Lance.
I guess the only thing you'd want though, and Drew Brees,
Kyler's
so not like
accurate. He's so accurate.
He is so accurate, but in that system where the ball has to get out so quickly, you do run the risk of him being forced to throw behind the offensive line,
and that's tough
because throw into throwing lanes, get batted balls a lot. Whereas you're getting an open lane via running around and creating an opening for himself.
McVay and LaFleur are more move the quarterback out of the pocket within that system.
Yeah,
where Shanahan and McDaniels are asking you to stay more in the pocket. There's very similar systems, but so maybe it is tough. Like Jordan Love, Kyler Murray are the guys that you're like.
I mean, they'll still take him. Like Shanahan would.
I'm telling you, if Kyler has a slightly down year, they're probably going to miss the playoffs, right? His contract becomes really negotiable, and if you're the Miami Dolphins,
oh man, yeah, you should try and do everything. I would agree with that.
Kyler could be the number one guy, like Raiders, Dolphins. I mean, Jets.
Pittsburgh could be looking for a
Pittsburgh. Kyler could have a real market next year, depending on where they end up with a pick. Like if they are in the top 5 or 7 again, and they feel like they can move up and go get a guy. And Kyler, or they have to fire their coach Gannon. They just kind of want a clean slate.
It could be very interesting. Yeah, we were saying next year's slate of quarterbacks is going to be fascinating. We didn't even factor Kyler into that situation, depending on if they do try and move off of him and rework some stuff. Yeah, this season.
I think Kyler's going to have a good year. I think he's going to have a good year. I think Marvin Harrison Jr. is a freak, and I think they're going to have a connection, and it's going to be like, hey, we've got this now. We got a lot more pieces to go to compete with the top end of this division. I think they need a new head coach. I'm not a Gannon believer yet, but
Arizona, we'll give them this year at least. Yeah,
Arizona.
We'll see what happens.
This was fun, and this is great offseason banter because again,
yes, for sure,
we just don't know, and it all so much of this matters on. Some of these guys are going into big contract years. Some of these guys are playing for their jobs. And then some of these
trying to establish themselves.
And think about how many rookies and second-year guys, we have are just like trying to figure out, can they even play?
Yep. It's a lot baked into just the simple, small discussion But yeah, that's the name of the game when it comes to the quarterback position. All right, that'll do it for us here on the Football Lounge with Mark and Dan. As always, appreciate the support. Please like and subscribe if you have not done so yet. Hit us up with any of your questions. Our DMs are always open. Facebook, Twitter at FB Lounge Pod, Instagram as well. And go check us out at forfantasysakeqc.com, where you can check out all of the other great shows on the For Frequency Sake podcast network. But that'll do it for us here today. We'll see you back next time.